Greetings, greetings, greetings. Good day, good night, wherever you are in the world. Just want to thank you for joining us live. You are now tuned into the vault. This is your host, Sharif Ali. Just want to thank you for tuning in. This is going to be a great episode. I'm looking to do my best to bring you all the hottest, best content on the internet when it comes to business structuring, how to basically administer your business estate because we all have an estate as business people, whether you are an employee or even as an entrepreneur. But I do always preface this information is particularly made for entrepreneurs because this content is coming from someone that lives in what we call America, the United States, and this is a capitalist society. It's an entrepreneur-based society. Entrepreneurs are what are growing the economy. They're creating the jobs. So this is going to be great content here because today we're talking about, are you a corporation? That is the most important question that you have to ask yourself over a short period of time in your life. A lot of people don't understand what that means. They never even think about it. I've had people tell me, I've never thought about, is my social security number a corporation? Because what has happened in people's lives is they've confused their natural name with their legal name. They think that their natural cells, your flesh and blood, can be inside of commerce. And I remember when I first was brought this information that your legal name is an actual legal entity. It is they call it an individual taxpayer because it is a entity. Okay, I want to go through some things, and I just want to let you all know that I usually have a Black's Law dictionary. So if you all want to understand the terms that I'm talking about when it comes to your legal name or natural name, I would love and appreciate if you all grabbed a Black's Law dictionary off the internet. You can grab them on Amazon or eBay and get a Black's Law dictionary. But point being is are you a corporation? Do you know the difference between your legal name and your natural name? Do you even know that there's a difference? Taxes chase title. So are you the owner of your legal name? Because if you own the legal name, then you're liable. People say, well, okay, if there's some type of entity set up for me when I was born, how is it that I'm not able to own it? Why can't I own my legal name? Once again, if you own your legal name, once again, you are tax liable. That is how. So the reason why I do this episode, Are You a Corporation, is because I want to explain something and you can get a better background in the history, which comes from the truth. The truth is, in 1913, that's when the income tax law was put in place. Okay, so you all are aware the income tax law was created in 1913, okay, with the IRS. They created a tax law for artificial entities, for artificial beings, artificial people. Okay, they didn't create a tax law for natural people. Why? Because people at that time, it wasn't even enough people in the United States to really be taxing them. They were doing well with their tax structure. You all know that 1913 was before the Great Depression. Great Depression came in the 20s, the 30s, 1920s, 1930s. So the Great Depression didn't even happen yet. Okay, 1913, wealthy people put those laws in place because there were more people in the society at that point, and they found a way to tax individuals. Okay, because at that point individuals were not taxed. When you think of your natural self, you weren't taxed. You would pay, what is that, property tax if you own property. That was a big tax. Sales tax. I want to let you all know that America went to war with Great Britain to actually not pay taxes. You all know about the Boston Tea Party. This country, the United States, was founded on people not paying taxes. So don't think that rich people got, all humanitarian and say, hey, we're going to tax ourselves now so we can give poor people our money. It doesn't work that way. No, they separated from England because they said we don't want to pay taxes. So why would they put another tax system in place to tax themselves out of wealth? They didn't. They put a tax system in place for, you ready, the uninformed families. Okay, so there's two types of families from the community that I instruct my students to actually understand, which is own nothing, control everything. So if you all want to get into enrollment right now, we're going to leave enrollment open till about September this year. We have quite a few people actually enrolling right now in the private trustee training and trustee training. If you want to get in, it is hfrn.vault@gmail.com. So I'm looking forward to just take on a certain number of students and move forward with them, get them coached and trained up on a private trustee system where they can learn how to administer their estates, and operate from a position of own nothing, control everything, and not have a tax liability personally. Because if you own anything, you can be taxed for it. So it's important to learn how to separate your assets. So when they say, are you a corporation? If you consider yourself a corporate entity, you will be taxed. That's why you consider it about you. That's why I put you in parentheses, because if it's about you, you will be taxed. Now you think about this. If you're able to be taxed like a fiction, because that is what entities have. Fictions have numbers. It's sort of like when I don't want to bring up that story. I want to bring up some historical stories, but I'm not. But because I don't want to offend anybody. But I do want to point out to you all that prior to 1913, I've seen in my ancestors' census records, because they've been in this country since 1913, and I've seen their census records, and they did not have social security numbers. I can actually tell you the first ancestor that I had, which is what, maybe she was my she was my great grandmother. She was the first one to get a social security number. Her mother previous to her did not have a social security number. Okay, so the social security number is a entity. Okay, did you know that all entities have to have numbers? Fictions have numbers. Why? Because they're property, and anytime property is gaining value in what's called interest or a dividend, which pays a dividend, that in turn creates a tax liability because it made a profit. Do you see that? Do you see how your social isn't taxed unless it makes a profit every single year? Now, the key word is it yours. Because if it's yours, once again, if you own it, you are liable for it. So when I talk and train our trustees, we learn how to utilize the socials as trustees, not as owners of the social. The social is just a business entity number. See, it's about gearing your mind towards doing business, not gearing your mind towards being an employee. Okay, so this information once again is not for employees, it's for entrepreneurs. So are you a corporation? A corporation is a legal fiction. It is a legal entity. It is a corporate entity. Okay, it is a entity that gains profits, that pays dividends to its shareholders. So you have to ask yourself a question: is my corporate name, my legal name, a corporation? It's not classified as a corporation, but it's being taxed like a corporation. Why? Because if it doesn't create any profit, then it's not taxed. Do you see how that works? And then if it creates a profit, then it creates what's called a profit, which is usually interest. Okay? Because you're the principal. See, these are legal terms. So when people say, oh, when I talk to lawyers and I get a speeding ticket, I don't know the language that they're talking, and that's how they get me out of this court case. Well, they get you out of a court case because lawyers administer legal fictions. Okay? They administer legal entities. That's why they are legal people. See, there's a difference between legal and lawful. When people say, oh, the United States is imposing on my legal rights. No, they're not. Legal rights are corporate rights. They're civil rights. Okay? Civil rights are legal rights. Those are appropriations by the group or the whole that have voted on to say this is civil. Okay? But did you know there's a difference between lawful? Did you know there's a thing called private rights? You all are familiar with private corporations. You want to know what a private person looks like? It's a person that does not utilize public entities. Public entities meaning a social security number. That means they actually maintain their private capacity as a natural being, because if you don't have a social security number, which I have friends and people I know that their parents just never gave them a social security number. Some of them are from Utah, so there are certain states that kind of favor people in that area that don't use social security numbers. But point being is I have friends that have lived their lives, their families or business people, so they created trust or business entities for their children. And their children, when they stepped into commerce, they actually used their EIN number, which is a employer identification number. Some people call it a TIN, which is a tax identification number, but nevertheless, it's still a fictional number that when you don't use it, it doesn't get taxed. But when you do use it, it incurs some type of profit or some type of tax liability. But once again, taxes chase title. If you are the owner, you will be taxed. So the whole goal in practicing tax avoidance, because that is what we instruct and train our trustees in actually doing, which is perfectly legal. If you all want a great case to learn tax avoidance, it's called Gregory, like the name Gregory, versus Helvering, and I'll spell that Helvering. It is talking about what we are talking about here. It is talking about practicing tax avoidance, okay, which is perfectly legal. Everyone wants to get mad at Donald Trump for not paying taxes, but how can you get mad at Donald Trump for not paying taxes when he told you, hey, I don't have a personal tax return? Why? Because he's not doing business with his social security number. So you, the entrepreneurs, particularly that I'm talking to, how much longer are you going to do business with your social, owning your companies? Is your company set up as a sole proprietorship? Is your company set up as a 1040 entity? Or is it set up as, is it been classified by the IRS an actual corporation? Just because you go to the state and you get an LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, once again, that has its own separate tax form. S Corps and C Corps and LLC have a corporate tax form. It's called the 1120. So when individuals are filing taxes with their S Corp or C Corp and they're still filing it on their 1040, I know they're uneducated. I know they're uninformed. You're informed when you're filing 1120. Why? That means you created a separate, distinct legal name, a legal entity, just like your quote unquote name that you think is a legal name. Now, you all know that I'm not against the government. Not against the IRS. I'm actually for them. The thing about it is you have to understand that a name is a corporation. These are words that are synonymous. So when you get your Black's Law dictionaries, you'll learn that a name is a corporation, which a corporation is an entity, and an entity is synonymous with a person. Okay? A person in commerce, that's why they say, what's on your person? Okay, when people say what's on your person, they're actually asking you what's on your corporate legal name, what's on your legal entity, what's on your legal fiction. See, people don't understand that in 1913, and when they were looking to create these tax laws, they couldn't tax individual people, natural living people. They couldn't tax a natural name, so they created a quote unquote structure or a system, and the system is what? The system is called tax system, okay? And the tax system is created for individual taxpayers, okay? See how they gave individuals that name, an individual taxpayer? But guess what? There are individual corporations too, and they pay taxes too. So they could not tax natural living beings. You all can do your research on your family tree and see that at one point taxes were not instituted on natural living beings. They just became that way in the past 100 years because it was another way to tax people out of their ignorance. So that is why you're being taxed right now. You're being taxed because you're ignorant. You're not being taxed because you're working hard and you're doing your civil duty by giving up 30% of your income to the government that's $19 trillion in debt. Okay? You're not. What you're doing is you are operating from a position of uninformedness. So the whole goal of me creating these episodes, Are You a Corporation, is for individuals to learn that, hey, my corporate name is a legal fiction. It's a legal entity, and all I need to do is put myself in a position to lower my tax rate by using a corporation, an actual legal corporation, instead of using one of the lowest forms of a corporation, which is called a social security number or an individual taxpayer. Why? Because the scale is gradual. The more money I make, the more money I'm taxed on. Whereas in corporations, those entities are set up to pass on tax liabilities. That's why you hear they say rich people don't pay taxes. Why? Because they're passing on their tax liability. They're passing on their tax liability to their shareholders. Their shareholder pay taxes. Think about it. If you have shares in a corporation and you make money, when you file taxes, once again, you are filing taxes. When your entity is filing taxes, it's filing taxes on the money it made. It's all about who's claiming that they made money. So everyone says, well, how am I going to operate my life if I'm not claiming that I made any money? This is how you operate your life. The same exact way that Donald Trump and every other rich person does. You operate your life through fringe benefits. When you all read publication 15B from the IRS, this is something you have to read, then you'll learn that guess what? Your cell phone can be a part of your corporation. Think about it right now as an individual taxpayer, especially if you have a home-based business, you can only write off a portion of it. But guess what? If you get into a true corporate entity, it's an actual true write-off. Why? Because the corporation owns that actual cell phone. And yes, you use the cell phone from 9 to 5 for corporate stuff, but on the back end of that, yeah, you still have the cell phone on you after work hours. So yeah, you use it occasionally for personal use. But you don't own it. That's the big deal. Secondly, since you don't own it, you're actually putting yourself in a position where the entity is liable for when it breaks, the expenses every single month for the monies for the phone, all of that, even for your car. Your car, does it take you to go get snacks and pleasurable things? Yes, it does. But from 9 to 5, that's a corporate vehicle. You see how it just took over your gas? So when you're driving around doing business for the corporation throughout the day, even on the weekends, it's gas for the corporation. It's not gas for you. You purchase gas now with the corporate gas card. See, it's about asset separation. It's about own nothing, control everything. It's about put yourself in a position where you're not liable. Say that car gets into an accident, it's got a different type of tax associated, a different type of insurance associated with it. You don't pay it, the company does. You see how wealthy people think? They think about putting it on their entities, not keeping it on themselves. Because they understand that anytime I own something, I can be taxed for it. Anytime I own something, I can be sued for it. Think about if you don't own any of the assets that you have anymore, but your corporation did. Your corporation owns your house. How? How does it own your house? How is it that you are not in a position to own your house anymore? It's if someone slips and fall, now they can only sue the house. They can't sue you, but they might try to come after you. And then when they find out, oh wow, you don't own the house, the business owns it. So then they have to come after the business. That's a different type of lawsuit. Because they have to show that they had a contract with that entity. They have to show that they were doing business there. Do you see what I'm talking about? The entity that you're utilizing, called a social security number, is an actual legal entity. It can be sued, just like your corporation can be sued. The only difference is those entities give what? Why do they call it a limited liability corporation? Because it limits liability. That's the whole purpose of being in it. Why do you think corporations own property? Because it hides the true owners or the true shareholders. Okay, so not to be long-winded in this episode, just really wanted to give you all some information to really go to bed and think tonight about, just thinking about, do I want my family, my children, myself to walk around and be known as a legal fiction? Do I want to be known as an actual corporation, or do I want to practice own nothing, control everything? So I'm going to open it up for questions. Right now we have a question. Shout out to everybody listening live and everybody listening in the replay. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate. Randy Winglass, he says, I want to open my own therapy practice. Can I turn it into a corporation if it's just me and a few people working together? Okay, so let's just look at this, Randy. You want to open up your own. Key word, you just said you own it. You want to open up your own therapy practice. Once again, you can use many different entities, and that is the owner of the actual therapy center. Okay, just because you open it does not mean that you're the owner. I had a consultation earlier with someone, and he said that when you looked at the New York, because he was in New York, the LLC form for New York, it doesn't ask who's the owner. It says who's the incorporator, which does not mean owner, and it says who is the filing agent. That's it. Why do you think people like Delaware so much? Because all it asks is, in Delaware, it says who's the person opening up this entity. It doesn't even states like the Nevada, states like Wyoming, states like Delaware, they ask for minimal information because that's where you understand that these entities are used as pass-through entities, so it doesn't reveal the true owner. The true owner is written into the bylaws. It's written into the operating agreement. The operating agreement says, okay, there's a trust that owns this. Just because you went and filed for it doesn't mean you own it. Okay, so let's keep it moving with your question. It says, and I'm going to rephrase it so you can understand how a wealthy person will organize this therapy center, not organize it as an uninformed individual. It says, I want to open up a a therapy center, which is fine. You open up the therapy center, you will be considered the organizer. The organizer, and some of the states will call you the organizer. That does not mean that you are the owner. It says, can you turn it into a corporation? Well, guess what? On the state level, that's all there is. The state level has corporate entities. They have S corps, LLCs. They have things called legal fictions. C corps. They do have public trust, and they do have they do have associations. If it's just me and a few people working together. Now, Randy, if you're still there, can you tell me, are these people working for the company as independent contractors? Are they working for the company as employees, or are they actual quote unquote shareholders in the profits that the company makes? Because look, when people write checks to the company, they're not writing checks directly to you. Are we clear about that? They're not writing checks to you. They're writing checks to the therapy company. But once again, taxes chase title. So if you own the actual entity, Randy, that means that, guess what? You are going to be taxed as an individual. But if the entity leaves those profits there, guess what? That entity is taxed. And you know that there is a corporate tax rate, and then there's an individual taxpayer rate. So if you could, Randy, let me know, are those people sharing in the profits of the company, or are they actually in a position where they're just employees? Because employees are an expense to a company. So you, as the CEO, you can utilize fringe benefits where the company is a what do I want to say here? When the company, has the card, has the cell phone, you can use the fringe benefits of those things. Okay, you says, got it. A paralegal and CPA. I'm just in the beginning stages of creating a business plan. Thank you for your help. I'm also interested in developing a trust. Hey, definitely. That's what we do in private trustee training. We help you develop private trusts to actually be trustees of and utilize those entities and do business with, and maintain your privacy of own nothing, control everything. So the individuals that you're talking about in this situation, Randy, they would be, like you say, they would be employees, which means the entity now would expense those people off, which is nothing wrong with that. Okay. And it'll provide insurances and things of that nature. So the monies that the entity is making is great. But on the back end of that, it is paying for those employees to have a job, which is awesome. Way to improve the economy by creating jobs, Randy. It says, thank you for your wisdom, Mr. True Blessing. It's a blessing to have you on the line. Thank you so much for listening live tonight at 9:20 something on your Friday. It's awesome to have you in tune. So once again, now, Randy, I do want to point out, there is, traditionally when you go to your paralegal or even your attorney, you want to make sure that they have the entity set up as an actual corporation. It classified as a corporation, and it's not classified as a sole proprietorship. Just because you get an EIN for the actual LLC or C corp or the corporation itself, that does not mean that it's separated from the entity that created the federal EIN number. That's not what that says. That the IRS, when you finish going through that process at the end of their website, because you can do this on your own, it says that at the end of this, if you do not file 8832, it would actually be looked at as a sole proprietorship disregarded entity. It says that. It says that by default. So unless you file this document and you know how to file this document, or you go get your attorney to actually do it, then clearly you own it. You have to make sure that there's a clear separation. It's called arm's length distance dealing with the entities. Okay, and so it's very important to be able to know that and implement that strategy, and then in turn it's set up as an actual legal corporation. So very important to make sure that your entity is in that position where it's a separate, distinct legal entity. And then publication 15B is a document that you need to read to learn as an entrepreneur how to utilize fringe benefits. See, everybody wants to get mad at these top CEOs for having key man insurance, for using getting these balloon payouts and things of that nature. But how can you be upset? I mean, they're only utilizing fringe benefits that the quote unquote IRS and government allow them to even utilize from the corporation. Okay, so it's very important. But remember, ownership incurs liability, and taxes chase title. So if you want to be in that position, you want to make sure that you're not in a position of being taxed and things of that nature. So I just wanted to share with you all tonight that your legal name, quote unquote, are you a corporation? And if it is a corporation, why don't you just go out and get legally classified, get it classified as a corporation? Because the social security number is for employees. If initially in 1913 it was created for federal employees, so the federal government employees could pay taxes, but individuals wanted to go get social security insurance at one point down the line, so more people started making this mass exodus towards social security insurance. Okay, and in turn, why do you want to wait till you're 65 for your savings? You know what I mean? I think that you can do better with your money than the government, but for some odd reason, people feel forced to be in that system. Well, guess what? If you are an entrepreneur, do you pay that? No, you don't have to have that. The corporation is the entity then at that point. Can it give you fringe benefits? Yes. Can it give you health insurance? Yes. Did you know your health insurance to your employees is a write-off for your employees? Did you know health insurance for the executives is a write-off? It's a part of, you can get group insurance. That's why I recommend you all read publication 15B. Okay? We're all entrepreneurs here. If it's going to be a corporation, let's operate it as a corporation. Let's make the insurance a part of the benefit plan where the profits are paying for that. You're already working for the money. Why not put it in a position where it's a write-off now? This is what the elite utilize. They utilize tax strategies. They asked Donald Trump, well, why don't you pay tax? He says, because I know the tax code better than anybody else. So as an entrepreneur, it's on your shoulders to know part of the tax code. Why? Because you got to know if your CPA or your tax attorney at least knows a little bit about what they're talking about. So I just encourage you all to put yourselves in a position where you know that you are not a corporation. That the social security number is just that. It is just a number to do business. You go get a passport, maybe a driver's license. You do a couple different things. It's a security number or indemnification number to make sure that you're not going to go out and do any bad in the society. You're not going to destroy people's property, things of that nature. Because if you own something, guess what? They're going to, especially if that number is tied to something, they're going to come after all those assets that number owns. Okay? And so yes, Randy, you said you started reading publication 15B last night due to my videos. It's a pretty lengthy document. It's a very clear read and addresses everything you said. You're welcome. Publication 15B, I don't think it's longer than like 30 or 50 pages. I mean, it's a weekend read. You know what I mean? It's not a long thing. The IRS will send you the actual handwritten publication in the mail. It's the publication for fringe benefits if you just hopped on. But that publication will, that's what you need as an entrepreneur. If you're going to be using a corporate entity, why aren't you utilizing corporate fringe benefits? Why are you filing as a sole proprietor benefitter and itemizing everything? You don't need to itemize anything. Let the corporation just own it. And then you control it. That is what we practice, control. Own nothing, control everything. That is the practice. So I look forward to hearing from you all in private trustee training. The email is hfrn.vault@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in to all the episodes this month, even on the YouTube page, Sharif Ali. And thank you to Philosophers. Yeah, 15B is really one of the shorter ones I've seen. I mean, there's some other ones I've seen that are pretty lengthy. Thank you all for tuning in live. Feel free to go to the Sharif Ali page on Facebook and even go to the Vault community on Facebook as well, and just stay in tune with the community. Always looking to bring the best content. I am looking to right now I'm organizing another event. Actually want to do the West Coast because I know the West Coast has been hungry for us all the people that are on the West Coast. Please feel free to email us and let us know where we should be doing it, either in Northern Cali or Southern Cali, but definitely gonna be doing an event in California. I want to bring the best to you all. We just expanded with some new trustees, and I'm talking about top level trustees that have been in the industry for a long time, and they're trustees of people that have millions of dollars, and they're looking to associate and bring on the next generation, because it's not about you as a trustee, it's not about you as a corporate entity, it's about successors. It's about who's going to come in and own, or not own, but who's going to run the company after you actually who's going to run the company after you pass. It's sort of like saying who's going to run the family business after you pass. And that's what trusts do. They allow you to put an estate in place where you can have the entity carry on your legacy and then not go through death tax, inheritance tax, probate tax, and all those things, because those taxes are very real, and I encourage you to look up and see how much those taxes are. But point being is you'll put yourself in a position where you can pass on your legacy, and you won't be taxed to death, or your estate won't be taxed to death, or your entities won't be taxed to death. And I like I say all the time, brother, people, this is not for everybody. There are people that want to live their life and they're living just fine and don't want to pass on anything to their children. But if you want to pass something on to your children, I look forward to serving you all in private trustee training and helping you all work for your last name, not your first one. So, own nothing, control everything. Please look into Fringe benefits via publication 15B from the IRS. It's a great one. And put yourself in a position of control, not ownership. Ownership incurs liability, and taxes chase title. So I look forward to connecting with you all. If you all have any last minute questions, feel free to connect with me. Other than that, I'm just excited and thankful that I have people that are continuously joining me live every day. Please feel free to share this on your Facebook page with your friends and family, because entrepreneurship is about creating community. Isn't that what they do when they create jobs? Don't they have company dinners, and don't they give people health insurance? Don't they give people ways to feed their families? That's called creating communities. So specifically, I talk to entrepreneurs, but I don't like putting people in a position where they're going to be taxed to death, because it's challenging to build a business when you're tax ridden. So put yourself in a position where you can increase your profits, and the way that you increase your profits is by practicing tax avoidance and tax minimization, and that is perfectly legal. Once again, if you all want some supplemental reading, which is the Supreme Court case from the IRS, which is a Supreme Court case, it's called Gregory versus Helvering, Helvering, and that is something that you can look into and read. As entrepreneurs, we need to know business law so we can make sure that we're standing on the right law. For some odd reason, you're paying taxes and you barely know that law, so it's important to upgrade your game to understand, okay, I at least need to get a little bit more educated on that, instead of just being an entrepreneur and getting all the money. It's about minimizing your tax liability and moving forward from there. So I appreciate you all for tuning in live. Someone else typed something. Who else typed something? Randy, definitely appreciate you, Randy. Appreciate you all for tuning in live. Feel free to share this with your friends and family, because it's all about coming together as a community. I look forward to serving you all as an entrepreneur trainer, as a trustee trainer, so we all can grow our estates, okay? We all can do more good than what, quote unquote, the government's doing. And the government's not a bad entity. They have protected Americans for a long time, and no one's dropped any type of bombs, and I'm excited about that. But the thing about it is entrepreneurs are what help the economy grow. So let's work together as entrepreneurs and grow the economy by creating jobs, and we need to be able to do that. So I'm excited for you all to do business together and go from there. Someone said, what about ultra varies or ultra vires? I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, Greg Clark. We're talking about, are you a corporation? And the biggest thing is when it comes down to being a corporate entity, that means that your natural name has basically said that it is a legal name. Just because you have a legal name, well, guess what? Microsoft is a legal name. Okay, so that doesn't mean that it's it's a natural person. Your natural person is different than a legal fiction, so it's not the best legal name to be operating with. It's actually better other legal names, which is basically just going out and creating a traditional corporation. A traditional corporation, whether it's an S corp, C corp, or LLC, all of those entities actually you can start, unless you're in Chicago. In Illinois, I think an LLC in Illinois costs $600, which is insane. Which I've worked with clients on before. But outside of that, the traditional states, Florida, Maryland, Cali, they're all less than $200. You can get into those corporate entities for less than $200. So and guess what, that's almost a write-off in that respect, because it's a business expense to get started. So for you all that are looking to start these corporate entities, those corporate entities, the operating expenses, the startup expenses, all those things are business expenses, for maintenance. So, there's a lot of write-offs that you can take from the corporate side, and even fringe benefits. So, definitely Thank you, philosophers, for answering his questions. Ultra varies. That means beyond the powers. Once again, everything's within your control when you're in a proper capacity, in a proper position as a corporate officer, an executive, not being in a position of ownership. If you own it, you can be taxed for it. That's simple. You can be liable for it. You are liable for it. And that's why, rich people, you hear them all the time say that they don't pay taxes. And the president of the United States say he don't pay taxes because he don't have nothing in his social security number. So very important. The Great Clark, thank you for joining us live. You said, can you help me define minimum contacts? I definitely recommend that you Google it. It's not a hard definition, but minimum contacts. I'm going to paraphrase it, so this is not the exact definition, but you can Google it. It's a legal definition. I encourage you to get a Black's Law dictionary. But a minimum contact is a legal term, and that basically means anytime you make money within the state. Anytime you have any contact with the state, meaning that any state entity, and you're actually generating some type of profit from a entity that's effectively connected with a United States trade or business. So it's very important for you to understand that, are you personally doing that, or are your corporate entities doing that? That's the most important thing. So just to give people food for thought, that's why the entities are taxed, is because they have a thing called minimum contacts. They're actually pulling from the state, what is that, Federal Reserve notes from other businesses via W-2 or 1099. And so that is those type of things. So yeah, philosophy says license, registrations, residential address, voter roll. Definitely, those are minimum contacts. But minimum contacts, I want to talk about minimum contacts from a financial perspective, not just from a perspective of I guess you would say just the fact that you have a contract. Just because you have a contract doesn't make something taxable until there's an actual taxable event. That's the definition of a minimum contact, is that you actually have created a taxable event. And if the event doesn't happen, then you don't have a taxable event. So it's kind of a little tricky on the wordplay, but I definitely encourage you all to look up that and go from there. So I don't want to be long-winded with this episode. I just thank you all for tuning in live. HFRN Period Vault is for trustee training and consultations. Feel free to contact me, Sharif Ali, if you would like to get one of those consultations or enroll in trustee training. I'm going to be closing the window here for the students here at the beginning of September, and be going forward from there. So there's going to be a wait period after that. We just had a great influx since I've been on YouTube of people that are looking to protect their private estates, manage their private estates, and as well to own nothing, control everything, and join our roles across the get into the private events that we have across the country. So look forward to connecting with you all. This is Sharif Ali. Continue to listen, subscribe, and I look forward to hearing from you. But peace, and enjoy the rest of your night or your day, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for listening.